Welcome to this episode of The Journey with me, Shaina NC. Today we probably have the most educated Member of Parliament, Sujit Kumarji, who is a politician of the Biju Janata Dal, a member of the Rajya Sabha representing Orissa in the Rajya Sabha, and of course was elected in 2020, extremely qualified, studied at both Oxford and Harvard. Let's first welcome our guest and then speak about his various roles, be it Special Secretary in the State Planning Board or his multiple hobbies, including being most well-read internationally and, most importantly, a non-controversial politician. Welcome, Sujit.
Thank you so much, Anna ji.
It's great to have somebody who studied at Oxford, Harvard as part of the journey, because one has a stereotypical notion of the Indian politician being the one who hasn't even completed Standard 10. And there you have multiple degrees, pursuing a career in law. Tell us a little bit about this journey of yours.
Let me start by telling you, Sana ji, that degrees are not really an index of someone's character or competence or intelligence even. I do acknowledge that I do have degrees, but when it comes to grassroots common sense and commitment to public life, probably degrees don't really help as much. But I grew up in a district called Kalahandi in western Odisha, which was rather infamous for poverty and hunger death.
Yes.
In the 80s and 90s. But over the last 20 years, Kalahandi has seen remarkable transformation under the leadership of...
Who would you attribute that to?
It's because of good governance and leadership of my Honorable Chief Minister. I grew up there, had my schooling in Kalahandi. Subsequently, I went for my engineering and then started my career in the IT world. After working with one of the leading IT companies in the country, I got fed up probably with the corporate life. Left it to work for an NGO back in Odisha. Moved back to Odisha and started working for a small NGO, and then went to Oxford for my MBA, and then worked for a few years abroad, and finally relocated back to Odisha in 2011.
Sujit ji, pardon my saying so, but it sounds like a film script. Almost as if somebody who has tried his hand at everything, be it the IT world, the NGO space, going back to education and then coming back to be this politician and representing your state in Parliament. Do you think this was a planned journey or pure destiny?
Not at all. It wasn't planned at all. Well, as a middle class boy, when I completed my engineering, this was late 90s, and obviously IT was the most preferred career option then. So I joined Infosys, one of the most sought after IT companies in those days. But after working for a few years, I didn't feel my heart was there. So I left one fine day in 2002 without really knowing what I'm going to do next.
Okay.
And all I knew was that I was not coming back to the corporate world and that I wanted to work with people. So as luck would have it, UNDP was implementing a community project in Odisha, and they were working with some local partners, NGO partners, and then I joined one of those partners and worked with them for 2.5 years.
Why did you join the Biju Janata Dal?
I think the clean image of Naveen Patnaik and the pro-poor schemes and the growth trajectory of Odisha. Odisha was probably one of the poorest states in the country.
But still a long way to go.
Definitely, because we come from a very low base. One needs to understand that when we talk of Odisha, Odisha in almost every indicator was probably at the bottom or second bottom after Bihar. But if you see the trajectory in the last 20 years, if you see where we have come a very long way. Of course, we have miles to go, but I think the intentions are good, the governance is good, and the leadership is exemplary.
Sujit ji, in these 2 years of being a parliamentarian and representing your state and the country in Rajya Sabha, what are the core issues you've raised? One knows about you championing that, you know, cancer patients should get GST relief, being a very positive contribution. But other than that, are there other core issues where you think you've actually been able to influence the government or stand up to your value system?
Yes, Saina ji, I've been very passionate about education because I am where I am today because of my education. And I firmly believe that we need to spend more on education, we need to focus more on primary and secondary education. As a country, we spend close to 3% of our GDP on education, which is abysmally low. Way back in 1964, the Kothari Commission had recommended at least 6% of India's spend on education as percentage of GDP. We are nowhere close to that number. Last year, we rolled out the new education policy. After 34 years, we had a new policy. It's a very forward-looking policy. It's one of the finest examples of public policy. But unfortunately, the focus on education is not what it should be.
Why do you say that?
I think somewhere it's a tricky balance between the midday meals and the missiles. So we have the pie is limited. So as a developing nation, I think the finance minister has a very tricky balance to do. But I don't care whether she gets the money from the infrastructure sector or from health or from any other sector. But I think education deserves a much better focus.
What would you do differently if you were the finance minister?
In terms of education?
Yes.
I would certainly allocate at least 6% as recommended by Kothari Commission and focus more on primary education. There should be at least one high school in every panchayat of the country. There should be more focus on girls' education and particularly for tribal. Today we have when we are going through this COVID or post-COVID scenario, large number of tribal youth are deprived of online education because either there is no internet or there is no access to these devices.
But obviously the Prime Minister's schemes like Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, Ladli Lakshmi Yojana in certain states are all very positive steps in the right direction. So in a country as large as India, you can keep wanting that more should happen, and legitimately so. But the resources being what they are, do you think that we have reached as a democracy where we should when vis-a-vis education?
Saina ji, let me put it this way. I think the Honorable Prime Minister's intentions are very clear and in the right direction. I think his heart is in the right place. I think he has made some structural changes, whether it's Swachh Bharat or Jan Dhan or
Mudra banking
or
Ujjwala.
Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao. I think it's all commendable. Also now with focus on Aadhaar and DBT, I think most of the funds allocated from Delhi is reaching the beneficiary. I totally agree with you. We have competing interests, we have competing demands, and we are a developing nation with scarce resources. So whether it's the butter or the bullet, we have to always take a call, right? So I think we are doing enough right things, and it's a matter of time before we join the Committee of Nation.
May I ask you a little bit about your primary learning, since you're so passionate about education? What was it that actually inspired you to get into the field of IT, or then digress into law, or now be a public representative?
Well, Saina ji, growing up in a very small town in remote India, in a place like Kalahandi, we had only two choices, either engineering or medicine. For any good student, either you had to study medicine.
Most parents were happy with those choices.
With those choices. And so I didn't know of anything else growing up. And I was not interested in medicine, so I chose to study engineering. Post-engineering, I had to take up a job as any obedient, good, middle-class boy would. And luckily, I got into Infosys. It was a very well-paying job, but somehow I think I was not cut out for corporate life. So, and my father is a lawyer. My father used to practice in the district court in Kalahandi, and growing up, I used to watch him. And I think the interest in law germinated in the early days of my life. And when I was working for Infosys, I took admission in an evening law college. In those days, you were allowed to do part-time law. So fortunately, I got a law degree. And I think law is one of the most critical and
it helps you no matter where you are.
No matter where you are, particularly if you are in public life and in politics.
Yeah. So in these 2 years of you being a member of parliament, what is the type of research you do? How do you raise questions? What are those questions that impact people's lives? And have you been able to make any kind of impact other than education?
Yes, GST you did mention.
Yes.
I'm very happy to note and to share with your viewers that I spoke on the floor of the House. I met the Honorable Finance Minister multiple times, wrote letters to her about the need to reduce GST on cancer drugs, and you will be happy to note, Saina ji, that she did oblige, and on behalf of thousands and lakhs of cancer patients, I thank her and the government for reducing GST on cancer drugs from 18% to 12%. So that's a direct impact.
Right.
I've been very vocal about increasing our R&D spend. As a nation, we spend only 0.7% of our GDP on research, and that includes pharma research, that includes research on high-end technology, on semiconductors, on art, on culture, on literature. So we need to spend more on research. And finally, I'm very passionate about Indian culture, about Indian history, Indian civilization, and we have only 37 ICCR centers across the globe. Our civilization is probably one of the oldest and probably older than the Chinese civilization.
Yes, and has so much to offer.
Yes, and the Chinese, China has 500 Confucius institutes. We have only 37. So what are we doing? If we don't tell our story, then others will tell it the way they like, and we will have trash books like the alternate history of Hindus. Right.
So there are a lot of people who are taking keen interest in the ICCR activities, and I'm sure as members of parliament too, there is a committee on culture. So do you give your input from time to time as to what you think should happen?
I think first of all we need to have more ICCR centers.
Okay.
I'll give an example. Taiwan. Yes, we don't recognize Taiwan as an independent nation. That's a separate discussion. I personally believe that India should recognize politically Taiwan as an independent nation. But Taipei has been so keen to have an ICCR centers. They are so keen to know more about Indian culture, Indian music, Indian art. But we are diffident. Ghana. I met the ambassador of Ghana in India, and he was so keen to have an ICCR center in Accra. There is virtually no representation of ICCR in Africa. How are we going to take or disseminate Indian culture, which has so much to offer?
So how do you propose to reach out to the youth of this country who really don't know too much about India's culture, and the so-called millennials have seen a different part because they haven't even seen the freedom movement, they aren't very well versed with the emergency. But now, because it's 75 years of India's independence, and one of the reasons we are doing this program, The Journey, on Doordarshan, is to highlight how vibrant a democracy we are and how great a nation we are. Do you have some thoughts on this?
We have all studied history in our schools, and we barely talk of freedom fighters from the south, barely talk of women freedom fighters.
There's so many.
There's so many. No one has
stories which are untold.
So it's a series of war that we are taught of, a series of invaders who we are supposed to extol and remember the dates.
So you feel with the invaders you need to know about the contributors.
Yes. And
one of the points that you raised in Parliament is about setting up this museum which focuses on the tribals of India.
Right.
That's also a segment which the Prime Minister thinks very passionately about.
Right.
Is that something that you think would realize in this Amrit Mahotsav, this 75 years of India's independence?
Absolutely, Sainaji. See, people hear a unilateral view of Indian freedom movement. It's not the case. There were so many brave tribal freedom fighters across the country who fought the British and made the life difficult for the British. We do not know about them. So it's time the country
wakes up
and at least documents and at least gives the freedom fighters, the tribal freedom fighters, the due which they deserve. So to start with, we can have museums for tribal freedom fighters, and this is what I raised in the House about having a museum in Odisha for tribal freedom fighters.
Maybe pan-India too.
Yes, absolutely.
So Sujit Kumarji, there are lots of issues that come up when it's the opposition, or the standard stereotypical notion that the opposition doesn't let the government work, has only disruptory tactics in Parliament. Do you agree that it is important to have a vocal opposition, but it's also important to be very progressive when it comes to issues of national interest in supporting the government?
Absolutely. Sainaji, let me tell you, as a party, Biju Janata Dal has never gone into the well of the house. Never. In its 25 years long history. We do not believe in disruption. We do not believe in sloganeering and disrupting the house. We are a very constructive opposition party. We support the government when it comes to matters of national interest, as we did for the abrogation of Article 370, as we did for CA, and on many national issues. But we are brutally honest when it comes to putting the government on the dock when we feel that they are anti-people or when the policies are not in the interest of the nation.
Give us an example.
We did not support the farms law, the three farm laws. Right? We did support the labor codes, the amendments to the labor legislation.
And which are the acts that you supported other than 370 and maybe even a triple talaq?
Yes, we have supported CAA. We have supported India's stand vis-a-vis China. We have supported India's stand on this Ukraine-Russia crisis. So we urge the government, we have always urged the government to hike India's defense budget. So there are many issues of national interest where we have supported the government.
Swami Vivekananda said that arise, awake and continue to work until you've reached your goal. Do you believe we've reached our goal as India?
Not yet. Not yet.
Reasons being?
We are still a developing nation. We are yet to achieve the potential we have, and I'm very optimistic about India's future, as our Prime Minister is. And you invoked Swami Vivekananda, who is my idol. See, we were Vishwaguru at one point.
Yes.
We were the repository of information and wisdom, rather knowledge and wisdom in areas of astronomy, medicine, architecture.
But we still are.
We still are, but somewhere over the years, over the centuries, we have lost much of our confidence. And New India is regaining its confidence. You see this confidence and this comfort in India's youth, and because we are a youthful population. 2/3 of our population is under 35, so that gives us a huge edge. So I would bet on India any day. I'm absolutely sure that in the next 20-30 years, India will be occupying the high table amongst the Committee of Nations.
What would your message be to the youth of this country who are watching this program, quite shocked to know that there are educated politicians like yourself too, who've come from Harvard and Oxford with so many degrees and are still contributing to the country? How would you want to inspire them and tell them to join public life rather than view politics as the last possible career option or way to give back to society?
Sainaji, I get this asked very often. Should youth enter politics? How easy or difficult it is to be in politics. I do admit that politics is a very difficult terrain. It's a very difficult field, but today most political parties are looking for educated minds, young minds, and running for office is one way of getting into politics. Policy making is another way. There are multiple ways of being in politics. You need not be
active and just
yes, absolutely. So there are multiple ways to contribute in public life. I would definitely urge more and more youth, because we have a youthful country, so more youth should represent the aspirations of our youth, and my party has I must thank my Chief Minister that he has believed in us. There are quite a few of us young politicians in the parliament from BJD. In fact, the youngest MP in Lok Sabha today is from my party, and it's a CE. So yes, I think it might be difficult, but nothing substitutes for hard work. And if you are committed, for public life, then I think there is immense scope for youth in politics today.
So you've obviously had a really different journey to the stereotypical public servant or person in public life in terms of the trajectory of going from one continent to another, coming back to India and almost making it like a story of that film Swades, where you come back to your country and want to give back. So are there any examples or any stories or anecdotes or quotes that you have led by which you would like our viewers to know?
I was absolutely clear when I left India in 2004 to pursue my MBA. I was absolutely clear that I would work for a couple of years, maybe save some money, get some decent education and then come back. But when and to do what, I was not clear of. So after working for 7 years in the US and UK and Switzerland, I decided to move back to India. So this did inspire me, let me be honest with you.
The movie,
songs,
the passion, the
yes.
Give back to your Matru-bhumi.
Right. And I think I am too much of a nationalist to allow myself to settle abroad. So there was no desire or question of settling abroad. When I decided to come back to India, I initially had thoughts of starting my legal career, which I did. And then I think at the back of my mind there was some thought of getting into politics at some point.
You've got so many global leadership fellowships, awards, international acclaim. Very few Indian parliamentarians have got this kind of traction, would you say?
I think I'm fortunate. Luck has played a major role in my life. And
you believe luck is important for politics too?
It is. Not that I had planned to get these fellowships. Yes, when I applied for my MBA, I did apply for a scholarship called the SCHOL scholarship. And I'm the very first recipient of that scholarship globally. So apart from that, none of the other fellowships or awards I have applied to. But I think, I firmly believe in the message of Gita. Bhagavad Gita keeps inspiring us.
What is that message?
Do your duty without expectations. Right. And my favorite book is The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. And there is a very famous line in that book, and let me quote it. It says, if you really desire something, then the entire universe conspires in helping you get that. And I truly believe that has applied in my life, and I truly believe that's the case.
They say politics and religion are obsolete. The time has come for it to be replaced by science and spirituality. What are your views on this loaded statement?
We are a multicultural, multi-religious society, so religion is not blood, it's not day-to-day activities. So I don't think in a country like India you can do away with politics or with religion.
Post-independent India, that in the current dispensation we've hardly ever had any communal violence. We have had a kind of bonhomie where people from different cultures assimilate with each other. Do you think that's a great advantage for a vibrant democracy?
Of course. As I have said, India is a plural society, so every religion has rights guaranteed by the constitution and has the right to practice their religion and propagate it, of course without trying to convert others. So I'm happy that we don't see as many riots and as many communal violences in recent years as we did growing up, and I really hope all political parties should have the maturity to not use religion for the political ends.
For just political gains and appeasement politics.
Yes, appeasement politics.
Yeah. There is a saying that caste, creed, culture are integral to Indian politics, Jaat, Paat, Dharm ki Rajniti. But then there is a viewpoint that we must move beyond and really talk about aspirational India. Are we able to strive towards that, or do you think a lot needs to happen 75 years down?
I think 75 years is too less a time to declare victory. Yes, caste system is one of the biggest bane of Indian society, and I think as a nation we need to move away from caste-based politics, sectarian politics. Unfortunately, in India we have a large number of political parties whose vote bank politics is unable to or unwilling to
Yeah,
allow
yeah.
them to win away from
To do
this,
so.
to do so.
What is Sujit Kumarji doing when he's not in active public service or not in parliament or not serving the people of Orissa?
Reading, or I'm an avid hiker. So whenever
Oh.
yes, I do hike. I have been to some of the most difficult hikes in the world. Recently, I've started playing tennis, lawn tennis.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, these are some of my hobbies. Reading, of course.
And as you part, what would be your special message to the viewers of The Journey and post 75 years of India's independence to this vibrant democracy of ours?
I would say that we should all take pride in our nation. We should all be proud of the fact that we are Indians, and we should work hard to take India to the place it deserves. And as Honorable PM has said, Amrit Kal, the next 25 years, those are going to be the most crucial years, most crucial years for India going forward. I'm absolutely sure that when we'll celebrate the centenary of India's freedom, we would be Vishwaguru for sure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sanaji. It was such a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. They say without passion and urge, there is a gradual oozing out of hope and vitality, a settling down on lower levels of existence, a slow merging into non-existence. We become prisoners of the past, and some part of it is immobility that sticks to us. If any person raises his hand to strike down another on the grounds of religion or appeasement, it is important to fight head on, to take on governments, to speak up and to ensure that India's democracy continues to stay vibrant. I'd like to end with a quote of Raja Ram Mohan Roy, where he says that the present system is not well calculated to promote their political interests. Truth and virtue do not necessarily belong to the wealth and power of distinctions of big mansions. The time has come for all of us to stand up and speak up about India's democracy. This week we had Mr. Sujit Kumar from the Biju Janata Dal. Next week we will have one more parliamentarian share his or her journey. This is me, Shaina NC, signing off.